Hi, I'm excited to announce Eric Elders, the guest for today's podcast. He taught me and a bunch of other fellow game wizards. We're all over the industry. We're in every single major studio. So I'm excited to have him. Hopefully, he will give us a breakdown of some of the highlights of that, and let's get into it.
I am a creative media consultant, and I specialize in the area of animation, video games, and XR. And on the production side, so building pipelines, managing teams, and then on the educational side, um, directing educational programs to train people in media.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of stuff that I wanted to ask you about. So I'm just going to dig
Great.
into it.
All right.
So how did you get into the industry? Because you came from an animation background, so
Right. Yeah. So in terms of video games or game design, my real entry was the program that you were part of at the Art Institute. Officially, I always had a love and a passion for games, for all kinds of games. But that's when I really got serious about game design and video game production. Was when I started that program at the Art Institute, which was one of the first bachelor's degree programs for video game production, because the program launched, I think, in like 2000, 2001 or so. We had our first graduates in 2003, so actually it had to be 2000 because it was about 3-year minimum for the program. And once I took that role, I started off as an instructor there, and then I was assistant chair for the animation and the new game program, which the game program had a lot of the same classes as the animation program. And then I had the choice to take either animation or game. And I picked the game program for a bunch of different reasons, including the one I mentioned before, that I, love games and have a passion for them. But another big reason was because I knew that, the Art Institute is not like a typical or wasn't a typical type of school. There was a lot more emphasis on job placement. And I knew that we were doing a pretty decent job in animation. But I also knew that nobody was really tracking it. Like they might track it by quarter, but it wasn't really being tracked. And I was curious myself to know how we were going to do and how we were doing in terms of games. And I knew that if I, became the director of the program and tracked it from the beginning, then I would know exactly what our statistics were. And that's how I know, I was academic director for 8 years officially. And I know that we had a 90 to 100% placement rate of graduates from the program because I tracked every one of you guys. And still track, and I'm still tracking you.
Us.
I'm still tracking you. That's how I found out about this podcast. So
That's true. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I definitely need more subscribers and guests. So AI was really interesting because I really want to know the Game Wizards history, because I think, I was there, like my class, we were kind of like the beasts. Like we were just like killers.
Yeah.
And then so I just am like what kind of
what year were you and what were your games? When did you go into Game Wizards?
So I started Game Wizards too early, but you can't start it too early.
Can't start it too early.
So I started with Thunder Flash, Mythos.
Yeah, dude.
And then I ran the Killing Time project. Yeah. So it was that kind of span between Thunder Flash and I guess Killing Time.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you were in the heat of it. You definitely weren't at the beginning. You were more like in the middle.
Yeah. So whose idea was it?
It was mine. And it came from, just a long history in education. I had already been in education for by the time I got there for like pretty much all my career, so like over 10 years. And then uh, at the Art Institutes, I was at the Art Institute of Philadelphia um, for like 3 years or so before I moved out to LA. And then I was at that campus for 10 years at the AILA. So I had seen the system and I knew how it worked. Um, and, I had a lot of kind of experience, um, by the time I got to Game Wizards, which, and again, my belief then, as it is now, even more strongly, after these years, is that the best way to train people to do something is to actually have them do it. And in media production, it's to actually produce games. So there was like a couple of classes. I did a lot of curriculum development over that 10-year span or so at AILA, on the game, crafting the game program. Um, and there's, at kind of the start of it, there was a couple classes that were basically elective. And I knew that the most important thing to do for you guys was to throw you into a game environment, like a production environment, and to model it as closely to AAA as we possibly could. I mean, of course, we couldn't do it totally, but as close to, and still be an actual class where you were getting credit. So that meant like, portfolios, interviews, having team leads, having everybody specialize as much as possible in roles. If you wanted to be a game designer, you could do that. If you wanted to, we even had a few producers that went on to be some pretty kick-ass producers in the industry in AAA. I mean, those were pretty rare. But yeah, that was the idea, and I just got super lucky to have, Nick Marks and Andy Clayton as the instructors. I mean, again, it was lightning in a bottle, dude. It was like literally like everything that could have gone right in that scenario kind of went right. It was having all those people, having V. Lee as the dean and Dave McGallion that allowed us to have that freedom to make the program, because none of the other schools had. Well, there was a couple other schools that had production teams, but nothing like Game Wizards. And also the close proximity to all of the game studios that were nearby. I mean, we had literally Activision headquarters was literally in the building adjacent to ours.
Yeah.
At the time, there was 3 developers on the business park there. Triarch being one of them.
Triarch and
there was Luxoflux, and there was
Luxo, yeah,
one other one. And Sony Santa Monica around the corner, EA a stone's throw away, a couple miles away, Heavy Iron Studios. I mean, we were like right in the middle of like Video Game Out.
Yeah.
Riot headquarters was, you could walk there. So that allowed for a couple different things. One, it allowed for us to pull teachers from the industry, and then the other thing it allowed for was me to constantly be having meetings with people in the industry to make sure that we were teaching things that the industry wanted and needed, the skills that you guys needed to have to get in there. So
yeah, that's definitely the main reason why I went there, because I went and took a tour and I was like, oh, it's shares a parking lot with Activision, like this has to be good. Like, it's all location. I'm like, if I go here, if I can figure out how to cross the parking lot, I think I'll be good.
Yeah.
I got my Activision shirt on. I don't know.
Nice. Nice.
I was like I was just thinking, and that was like the main reason. I was like, I can go somewhere else, but for some reason, I think that this school is where I'm supposed to be, and it panned out pretty well.
Yeah.
So I'm happy about that.
Congrats on all the continued success too. I know it's not easy, getting into the career, no matter what kind of start you have, and then maintaining a career. So kudos to you on everything you've done.
Thanks. Right. So the next thing I wanted to get into was the Epic Mega Grant.
Yeah. Yep. So I've actually been, so this is actually early announcement here, so a sneak peek. I've actually been awarded two mega grants. So the first one was for 10,000, and it was for a Unreal boot camp that we deliver virtually um, to for Compton Unified School District and several of the high schools in Compton. Well, I won't say several, a few, like I think 3 or 4 different high schools from the district participated students. So that was really successful, and looking forward to doing more stuff with Compton and taking that pilot and expanding it and offering it, other places, even internationally. I'd love to do it in the in the Caribbean. I've been working with Trinidad and Tobago, the university there, for several years on game and animation programming, and also been having a lot of conversations in various parts of Africa. So love
Wow.
to do it there as well. And then the second mega grant is for 50,000, and that is to start, pretty much take the Game Wizards model, but apply it to the XR space. So the XR Wizards Lab will be launching at uh, LA City College. The pilot program will be launching next year in the spring semester. So we're laying all doing all the foundation work right now, actually.
And can you repeat where is it gonna be at?
Los Angeles City College.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess the thing is, like, so can you break down the mega grant application process? Like what, like when did you hear about it? Where you're like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do? Did you already have ideas planned? Like,
Yeah, so a couple different things. So one, actually, I applied for the second one first. So I've been working on putting together this XR Wizards Lab for like the last 3 or 4 years or so, and I originally was planning to do it at um, uh, Loyola Marymount University. Um, and that's when I originally put the plan together. It didn't go through there, um, but along the way, and just kind of looking for funding, I saw the Epic Mega Grant. Actually, I think the first thing was actually I through LinkedIn I found an old dear contact, Linda Selheim, was on their educational team, and so I reached out to her when I found out that she joined Epic's team, and she directed me to some articles that were give you information on how to how to apply for the mega grant. I had heard about it, but she directed me towards some good resources there. It's actually a pretty simple application process. Um, so I put that together and applied, and then I also joined through those conversations. I joined the educational task force that Linda put together, and through those conversations, I found out about this virtual desktop solution where you could run Unreal on Chromebooks to make it more accessible. And I thought that was a great opportunity for our efforts in bringing Unreal and gaming production education to the inner city. And I have been having lots of conversations with Compton Unified about how best to do that and building a video game pathway there. And so yeah, that was, I talked to those folks and put another grant in for that, and that one actually came through first, and then I found out about the next.
so for the Chromebook Unreal is it a remote desktop? So they
Yeah,
just log in and then so those PCs are somewhere,
yeah.
right?
These
So
these these were at, so you could do it a couple different ways. You could have your own PC someplace. and work with Epic and AWS to set it up that way. These, I think partially because it was a pilot and they wanted to, to test it out. Um, we were able to utilize PCs at Epic and work with.
Oh, that's awesome. So you didn't have to invest in, because I'm like you still have to spend the money to have that
Yeah.
high end rig,
Well, you
and now you're just adding a Chromebook on top of it. So I'm
right,
like, that doesn't make sense to me.
right,
But now it makes a lot more sense if you're using Epic's computers.
yeah,
Then you're like, oh, that's great, especially for these kids that might not have the opportunities to work with technology or the funds to buy a computer that you need to run Unreal.
yeah. Well. Interestingly enough, though, Content Unified is pretty progressive, which is one of the reasons why I invested so much energy in talking with them. So they had the high end PCs already. It's just like an accessibility thing, like with COVID coming
Yeah.
into a laboratory where the PCs are, and then also with the virtual desktop solution, ultimately they could, since most of the students have them, they could basically make it accessible to more students. I think just time wise and logistically. So
So what kind of projects did you have the students work on during the boot camp?
yeah, so we did. Epic's done an amazing job of putting it together, and utilizing the community, leveraging the community of instructors and other folks to put together all types of lesson plans and curriculum. And so we found one that was basically a museum project where the students build a museum, and we just tweaked that one a little bit, and made it like more personalized to them. So they were the instructor Benny Terry, who was amazing. I think he was calling it the Museum of Now, and so it was really, they built a museum space based on reference, and then they populated it with images that were important to them. So whatever they were into in their life, they pulled images from the internet and then put them in this museum. But they were able to, learn the basics of modeling, lighting, triggers. We got into Blueprint with them a little bit. Um, just like kind of the basics of building a level in Unreal. Like in a week, they were able to get something up,
Wow.
and learn the basics, which was pretty awesome. Especially first time I was trying it out.
Yeah, that's really good. Do you know if any of the students stuck to it and they're like, oh, I want to, like, did they have that opportunity to?
They definitely, there was definitely interest in continuing on. I haven't had the chance to follow up with all of them, but a few of them definitely said that they wanted to. So I need to reach back out to the contacts at Compton and see what the next step is there. So
Awesome.
a lot of folks at various levels I've talked to, like Economic Development Corporation of Los Angeles. I just had a lot of conversations with folks about, like, building this pathway, right? Like there's like very few um, minorities in the video game industry on the production side. I know
Yeah.
specifically blacks, it's like less than 1%. And so, you have all these young people in LA who have interests, and that's, like geographically, that's where the industry is. But I don't know, it just seems like the people who are, I don't want to say this, in power, in charge of education, um, are like still scratching their heads trying to figure out how to put these programs together. And again,
Yeah.
for me doing it for so long, it's like, wow, like there doesn't really seem to be, like no real progression has been made. And I kind of like, haven't been as focused on education as the production stuff for the last several years, I guess, but still I always have had my foot in there. Um, but yeah, the idea was to, like, how can we effectively build a pathway? And it's just like you said, like, you know, Unreal, classes, um, and production classes into high school, then going into, a program um, that's at the college level to some type of internship or apprenticeship program into, an actual, uh, position in the industry. That's the plan.
That sounds awesome. Like I kind of lucked out in my high school. We had a program called CART,
Mm.
and I don't know if you've heard of CART,
Oh. Mm.
um, but it was the Center for Advanced Research and Technology. So that's what
Oh.
CART stands for.
Wow.
So there was a multimedia program there. So that was web design and like movie production and stuff, like small video production. Like it was really bad at the time, right? It was like early 2000s. So
Yeah.
there wasn't like, the technology wasn't quite there yet. YouTube wasn't even a thing.
Right.
Like if it was when YouTube was a thing, oh man, that would have been crazy. But I mean, it still exists now, so those kids are killing it.
Hmm.
But that got me into learning Photoshop and learning how to make websites and graphic design and stuff. And then I was like, oh, if I can do this stuff, like I'm sure some of these skills can translate to games.
Mm.
So when I went to AI, I was thinking of doing graphic design, and then I saw the games program, and I was like, I didn't even know that there were games programs.
Mm.
And I was like, this is what I really want to do. I already know all this stuff that I learned in high school. Like I don't need someone to teach me Photoshop. I already know it. And then I was just like, cool, let me just jump in games. So that was my progression. So if there's something for games in high school, I think that'd help a lot of kids out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so what advice do you have for people who are debating on going to school for games? Because
Mm.
a lot of people are on the fence, especially right now with COVID. They're
Sure.
like, I'm going to learn from a video. I might as well go on YouTube and just watch someone's tutorials, or, like what do you recommend them to do?
Well, it really is specific to each person. I definitely would say you don't have to go to school, and therefore like go into debt, right? Like again, if you get a
Yeah.
scholarship, hey, great. Um, but I definitely wouldn't recommend going into debt, um, to get a degree, because you don't need a degree to get into the industry. Like you need the skills and you need the portfolio, right? And I was saying this even back at the art institute. I would say it at orientation, like, people didn't like it that I was saying it, but I just always believe in being straight up, right? Like, look, you don't. I would tell the kids in orientation, I would be like, you don't need to come to school here. Is there value in coming to school here? Sure. Um, I think the thing that school provides you with is really the context, which I would say some people, a lot of people need. You know, I've done a lot of career coaching over the years, and there's a young man I'm coaching right now who's considering going to one of the big programs in Florida. I can't think of the name right now. I'm thinking
Ringling?
I'm thinking Ringling, but it's not that one. It's the other one.
Full Sail?
Full Sail, yeah. And he's like, should I go to Full Sail? Um, I was trying to encourage him to get out to California and get to Noman. Just because, man, Noman is just, I don't know if you've ever been to a portfolio or show or anything there,
Yeah.
but it's just
The
like
portfolios are
unbelievable.
outstanding.
Yeah,
Their art is incredible.
yeah, yeah. So um, so he was saying as an interim step, because I was trying to help him design his kind of own curriculum that he can do, um, just to get started. But he was saying like maybe I should go to a school like Full Sail and learn animation. And again, I think actually he wants to do more animation than games per se. Um, but in any case, like, so my advice is, um, know yourself. Know if you really need that context and structure to go to school, and if you need that, if you can't do it on your own, then sure, do it. If you don't need it, if you are a self starter and you can, you're good at learning from videos. There's just so much, again, educational content out there. Like, again, I just think about all of the Unreal material out there, but there's a ton for Unity too. Um, there's just tons of information out there. It's unbelievable. It's all there kind of for free. Um, and if you can do it. Now, the other thing though is that you shouldn't do it alone. So you at the very least should have a buddy, but ideally, like, again, if I was a high school student right now, knowing what I know, and I was interested in games,
That was
I
actually my next question for you. So
yeah,
you went right for it.
yeah, I would. What I would do is I would find uh, four other guys, right? And again, you could do this now. You could do it virtually. It actually might even benefit you to do it virtually because there's so much virtual. I mean, again, like I would say, the majority of people in tech and in the video game industry are all working virtually from home right now. So, adding that bit of training to your program, it probably helps, right? But I would find four other guys. So let's say I wanted to be a game designer, right? I would and producer. I would find one or two engineers, a couple of good art guys, and I would start learning and learning specifically to build prototypes for games. Um, and I would build as many games as I could, as rapidly as I could, all through high school, and basically see how good I could get by the time I would be ready to go to college. And then I would kind of like, consider from that point, based on my portfolio and the games I was able to make, whether I should start applying for internships or entry level positions, or go for some more formalized education.
How much time would you give yourself?
I would give myself shit, man. Honestly, like, again, I'm a big fan of Gary Vee. And he's a proponent of, like, basically taking your entire 20s at this point, and
Yeah.
just kind of like exploring. And I would say, if I was a freshman or sophomore in high school, right, and I was really clear, I knew that I wanted to be a video game professional, right, production develop professional, then I would, again, if I could find these like four guys, and you could even switch it up, but I would just, stay, and I would give myself, yeah, maybe 12 years, to really like develop myself. Um, and I figure at the end of that point, again, definitely if you have any kind of talent, you're going to be pretty badass if you do it consistently, and get at least, I don't know, one or two. Depends on how elaborate the games are, but I would say, you know, probably I would start off with doing smaller projects first, and then as I progressed, I would, have them be more and more complex. You know, maybe I would give myself a thesis at the end of that time period. And spend like a year or so on a game. You know, something like that. That's what I would do. I think that would be the most beneficial. And along the way, like, as I started getting games that were, you know, worth looking at, I would try to engage with people in the industry, especially people that I admired, or people at studios where I might want to work, and get their opinion on my games and get some feedback, as much as possible. Enter contests. That'd be another big thing. Like, if you could win some contests for best game jams, maybe, um, could be could be valuable, especially if you could win some, if you can get some under your belt. Like, I know I've heard of a couple of people who basically launched their careers off of game jams. Like, they won two or three of them and got noticed, by the right people, and were able to get hired at game companies without necessarily going to school or having a degree.
That's awesome. Um, so the next thing that I wanted to ask you about was board games. I know you're a huge fan of them. You
Yeah,
have a board game background.
right.
Uh, last, I don't know how to say this right, but I remember one of the first things you had me make a PowerPoint
Uh-huh.
pitch for
Okay.
that Firefly board game
Okay.
that you were pitching. You remember that?
I hardly remember that, but yeah, okay. I yeah, vaguely.
So so I just wanted to know if you were making board games.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have not completed one yet, but definitely it's still an interest of mine, board game design, and I actually just started working on a new one recently.
Well, that's why you
Uh,
haven't finished one yet.
right, yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, that's one of the reasons. Um, the other reason is I just haven't been um, uh, I haven't gotten one that I was happy with. Like I mean, probably I did a magician game, which was this is basically like I don't know if you ever saw that movie, The Prestige.
Hmm.
It's basically Prestige, the board game, right? Like the idea is you start off with like you know parlor magic, like card tricks, and then you work your way up to like big illusions, right? Um, so I had got that to a point where I play tested it quite a bit, and I some other people were really happy playing it, but I was never really happy with it. So I think that's part of the prerequisite for me. But I'm just not as consistent with it. It's more like a hobby. I consider myself like
Got
a
it.
casual board game designer, not really as serious as I've seen. Like I have a friend who's a professional that has several published games, and I see the amount of work that it's. I mean, it's a full time thing. Or if you're
Yeah.
not doing it full time, if it's not your day gig, you need to be doing it like nights and weekends consistently because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the XR Wizards Lab.
Yeah.
The I'm assuming the premise is just taking the Game Wizards formula and then putting it into a new space. But like,
Yeah.
how have you improved that formula?
Well, it is a bit different in that, we were Game Wizards was designed, the original Game Wizards was designed for, people who wanted to work in AAA game development, right? This structure is designed for anyone who wants to make great augmented reality and virtual reality experiences. So, so much smaller teams. I mean, we started off in Game Wizards with a team of like what 20, 30 people. Here, the teams probably will be like 4 or 5 people. Um, we would spend 6 to 9 months on a project. This is going to be 30-day rapid prototype cycles. Um, and then deciding from there at the end of that 30 days if the project will go back into the laboratory or if it will complete, or if it's, you know, um, uh, if it's polished enough, if it will go, you know, some other route to continue its development. Um, what else is different? When we were doing games and Game Wizards, the video game production process, although different from studio to studio, there was a lot of kind of consistency um, in terms of like tools and basically how you go through the process. Whereas in XR, I feel like everything is changing pretty rapidly, and so the laboratory will reflect that. Like you know, we will always be looking for whatever the latest tools are that are useful. It'll just be a lot more flexible in its structure in terms of what's the best tool for the particular project that you want to make. Like, is it an entertainment thing? Is it a medical simulation? Is it flying drones? Like, depending on what it is, um, the mentors and trainers and the tools that you use will be reflective of that.
Um, Do you plan?
And one other thing. So another thing that's like really critical is I also really want to see a um, uh, multi-dimensional team in terms of like students working together with independent developers, working together with professionals, like in a mix, which is something that we really couldn't do. Game wizards in school was pretty much all students. So,
Oh, that's interesting. How do you plan to do that? Because that seems like that would be difficult.
um, well, we're still working out the details of it, but I mean, it'll be an open structure. And so, I mean, definitely independent developers, like say like if you were an independent developer with a project, you could apply to be in the laboratory, and some of the people on your team we could matchmake you with would be, talented students that we're already working with.
So let's walk through the process, and it might not be all done. So
Sure.
if I was an independent developer, let's say I want to make a VR walking experience, right? I
Sure.
just want to walk through a town or something.
Okay.
Um, and I'm
So
like,
like a
okay,
virtual tour.
like a virtual tour,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I'm here. Do I pay XR Labs, or do I
Yeah.
like what's that arrangement? So
Yeah.
I'd
So
pay.
first you would apply. First you would apply with your project. So you would have to pitch your project. It would
Okay.
have to be evaluated, and we'd have to evaluate, what exactly the resources are that you would need to get your project done. Um, the still deciding whether there'll be any type of charge for that initial kind of assessment. Maybe not at first, but eventually, I think there probably would have to be. Um, but if your project actually gets selected to go in the lab, because not everyone will, um, then we would figure out the best, teammates for you, or you could, have your own, resources like your own team that you're bringing into the lab, and maybe you need other support. So it's completely flexible that way. But again, let's go with your example and say that there would be some students that we would say, oh, we have some great artists, we have some good engineers here. You're basically the designer, producer of the project. And yeah, you would pay a fee to have your project be um, in the laboratory and get the support of the laboratory for that 30-day prototype period.
So what is the support of the laboratory? Is it just the students?
No, it's basically whatever we need and agree on at your assessment. Okay, so yeah, at the assessment, it's basically figuring out, what you need, right? So if there's like certain skills that you need to build the project, then we would bring in a trainer or a mentor to help whatever team member is going to be working on that aspect of it. Um, if it's kind of like production management, like basically giving you the structure for how to work on it on the project effectively, then we'll do that. It's basically we look at whatever you need to get that prototype built as effectively as possible at the end of that 30-day period. Then that's what we'll provide for you.
So does the resources that you provide come from a demand from the person who's trying to get their project in the lab, or is it from the evaluation process that you do and you say for this project you'll need
Right.
XYZ and we're going to give you XYZ?
Yeah. It'll be both. It'll be both. It'll be. I mean, like that person could you as an applicant, and your project is accepted. Like you will want to know like what do you think that you need um, to get the project completed or prototyped, but we'll also, of course, make recommendations as part of the assessment as well. And then, basically we decide from there. And again, if it's not going to work, like again, if you're asking for something, let's say that we can't provide or that we don't think is really going to work, then the project, wouldn't be a good fit. um, and otherwise.
So, what do you think? So why VR and AR? Why are you moving into that space?
Well, really, because it's the future as I see it. And I mean, initially the idea, well, it's been the natural progression for me. So I went from animation into video games, now into XR. So it's definitely my interest. There's definitely a need for it, um, because I'm just seeing all types of um, colleges, learning institutions, universities trying to figure out how best to provide education and training in the space. Even the very top people, like I've had several uh, uh, meetings at places like Facebook, right? And even, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Um, so I'm sorry, what was I saying?
You were talking about why VR and
Oh,
AR,
yes.
and then you started talking about Facebook stuff. So,
Oh,
you
right,
want to
right.
start?
Yeah, yeah. So even like having conversations with like Facebook the last couple of years, and Oculus, like they're still, it's still relatively new for everyone. So the industry is still learning and growing. So it's not like film, or even as established as video games. And so I feel like and I also really strongly believe that trying to do a curriculum. So people need training, right? Across the board, students, um, independent developers as well as professionals, even in the industry, still need training, right? And I also feel that trying to put a curriculum together, like a cookie cutter curriculum that everybody can use, is not really useful or is not really going to work in the XR space. I mean, again, I think there's certain skills that you can learn and you can take classes for, but I feel like any curriculum would be outdated by the time you implemented it, which I think that's been proven already. Like the few schools that kind of jumped out there and put together a VR curriculum 2 or 3 years ago, it's out of date now. Whatever they have in there, you know, as far as like the detail, the nitty gritty of the program.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, is there a project that you have in mind from
Yeah,
the get go?
yeah. There's a couple. There's again the um, we've been talking about doing a drone training application in XR. Um, the school has a nursing program, and I think that a nursing VR application could be really valuable. I just see a big demand for um, training applications for industry, um, and particularly in like manufacturing, medical, things like that. So definitely interested in doing games, entertainment stuff as well. But I think the big where XR is really going to break out over the next several years, and I think it's already started to happen, is in corporate training for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Is there anything you want to say to people while you have the My huge platform.
Oh, no, I think I love the questions, man. I really appreciate the time. This was great. You know, touching base and having this time to have the conversation. And yeah, I just wish you all the best with the show. And yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric.
Cool. Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Good luck, man.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. And I definitely will be ringing you up when we start needing the trainers and
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right.
Hit me up whenever. I'm a resource.
Cool. I appreciate it, man.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Later.
Okay. Bye-bye.